Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 783. I'm Jon Quigley, your host. Today, we tackle a classic work intake problem. Do you have the authority to ask for this work? Work intake processes need to vet more than just requirements. Or you might do work that you don't need to, aren't supposed to, or you might need a lawyer. We also have a visit from Jon M Quigley. Jon and I discuss taking control of your personal growth. It's not your organization's responsibility. Just saying. Do you have the authority to ask for this work? My wife and I were walking our dog a few weeks ago, and the subject of work input lessons learned came up. Yeah, you just have to think about that for a few minutes. One of the stories we shared concerned accepting work from a client only to find out that they did not have the authority to spend money. One of the lessons learned was that just because someone had the title of vice president didn't mean they could authorize work. We both agreed the work intake process used didn't cover all the vetting and due diligence bases. While the scenario took place between two corporations, this scenario also plays out inside of corporations. I sat in on a meeting between two team leads to discuss why one team was requesting emergency access to a piece of code the other team maintained. The team making the request had been told to make a change they had no authority to make by a manager without letting the product owner do due diligence. The whole team had been forced by the hierarchy into just being order takers. I felt bad when they left the meeting with the task of telling their stakeholders and their manager that the work they committed to doing had about as much chance of happening as someone hitting the lotto several times in a row. Access was not going to happen without getting a sign-off from the CEO and the external auditors. There was a security thing going on there. In both scenarios, there was a lot of hard feelings and wasted effort, not to mention opportunity cost of the work not being done. No one validated whether the parties involved had the authority to commit to the work before it was pushed into the team. Not having a rigorous approach to work input leads to several potential issues and risks. Quality concerns. Without vetting, work can be rushed, leading to errors of commission and omission. This can result in poor quality work, missing deadlines, and subpar deliverables. Financial risks. Engaging without vetting can lead to financial risk. You might end up paying more than the market rate, encountering hidden costs, or experiencing budget overruns due to unexpected expenses or inefficiencies. On the other side of the equation, you might not get paid or have to engage costly legal representation. Reputation damage. Accepting work without proper vetting can damage your reputation if the work performed is substandard, leading to dissatisfied customers and stakeholders. Legal issues. Legal and financial risks are intertwined. Contract disputes are in no one's best interest, other than the lawyers, of course. Avoid them by asking the right questions, prioritizing and sequencing work. Security concerns. In the second example, one of the biggest issues with granting access was the sensitivity of the module and access it granted to other systems. Security in the 21st century cannot be an afterthought and must be accounted for when accepting work. Compatibility and communications. Starting work without vetting might lead to compatibility issues, mismatched expectations, poor communication, causing misunderstandings and inefficiency in execution. Reliability and trustworthiness. The first example is a reflection of engaging with individuals who lack reliability or trustworthiness. This can lead to delays and lack of accountability or even abandonment of work or a project. In summary, vetting is a crucial step in a good work input process. Work input needs to align to the needs and expectations of clients, stakeholders, and teams. Building a good work input process cannot be an afterthought. Thoughts, comments, all welcome. Please feel free to reach out to us at spamcastinfo@gmail.com or leave a message at 01440-668-5717. We look forward to the conversation. Jon M Quigley, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
The M is for magical.
Magical. Excellent. I see that you're growing your Santa Claus beard back.
I am growing my Santa Claus beard back. It's almost there. I probably need another maybe 2 inches to be about right.
And how long does it take you to add 2 inches to that's about a 4-inch beard?
Yeah,
for all of you
4.
who can't see it, but
and it's a blonde, platinum blonde.
We call that gray, at least in Ohio.
That's what we call it down here too. I try to spin it, but nobody wants to buy it.
Okay. Okay, so Jon, today.
Oh, by the way, I'll be ready for Christmas.
Okay. All right. Well, that you have a third or fourth career as a Santa Claus.
Yeah.
It's like you do have multiple careers. You've done a lot of different things.
Maybe most people do, actually.
Well, I think they do these days. I think at one point it was go to school, think, learn, and then do until you die, and do the same thing over and over and over and over, and that worked. I just don't think in our world anymore that's anywhere distinct possibility.
And that might be okay, actually. At some point in many organizations, at least from what I can tell in my experience, is that it becomes at some point kind of rote. There are very few organizations that are continuously pushing the envelope and then are giving you opportunities to continue your learning. So you kind of have to move out into something else.
Well, you own your own learning.
Yeah. And how you apply it, where you choose to apply it.
I think if we go back before either one of our hair was platinum, there was a feeling, and maybe even in some of the corporates today, that the organization will supply you with training time and training money, and that should keep you abreast and keep you moving forward. But I in general see many companies, they'll have you'll have a budget of X number of hours, X number of dollars, and then you'll be running at 110% capacity. And the question is, when would you ever have time to actually spend that? And if you did, you'd probably get fired anyway because you wouldn't get your job done.
Yeah. It's either that or it comes at a serious penalty to your home life. Not a mix of some home life and some work life. I've been very lucky, and maybe it's to your point, in the olden days, most of my master's degrees were acquired working at a company who actually had really good benefits in this regard. One of them, you could go for free, but if you did not score a B or better, if your GPA was less than 3.something, 5, whatever, you were 3.5, whatever, you were going to be paying for that. So at the end of every semester or quarter, I forget how that works, if your grades were high enough, they would just take care of writing the check to the university. There's almost no money out of your pocket except for going to driving, fuel, books.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. How is that company today in comparison to the market?
I have to look, but they're always really good.
Okay.
They're always one of the top players in their game. So my guess is that's still true.
So there probably is a relationship.
Yeah. The other part of that, I think, why people leave, if we're going to move just a little bit off to this, in this subject area, at least for me, is they'll provide you the education, and now you know more, and you would like to do more, and maybe you have aspirations to be something different in the company than you are. But just because you know more, can do more, and have proven more doesn't mean you move anyplace else different in the company. And then you have to leave, essentially.
Is that necessarily bad for anybody at that point?
It's at least a minor hit for the company that you're working at, because you're walking out with your tribal knowledge that's not getting spread to other folks.
Well,
so it's maybe a little bit, but maybe it doesn't matter.
You were going to leave anyway if you had aspirations, and there
true.
was no place for you to go. I guess in that circumstance, they would have to find a mechanism saying, well, Tom, I just want to tell you, you really shouldn't invest in yourself, because you're going to be washing and scrubbing potatoes until we don't need a wash and scrub potato guy again. Jon, you're going to be a fry cook for the rest of your career here. So studying management, we're not going to help with that, and we don't think you should do it.
It's maybe a waste of time for you. This is kind of funny, because at one point I went to the chief engineer of the company I worked at, because I had not articulated that I had aspiration. But I figured the work that I had been doing and the fact that I had invested in 2 master's degrees would sort of be a little bit of a hint that I was interested in something more than being the development engineer. And so when I sat down with him and I had this conversation that I was interested in this and becoming impatient, he more or less I didn't use that word, he did. He said, that's the problem with your generation. You have the delayed gratification thing. And I sat back in my chair and I said, Jon, 2 master's degrees, I think, is a pretty big investment on top of an engineering degree. And to me, that seems like I've delayed quite a bit of gratification. Both of those were not easy, and they took a lot of time from, my personal life and time with my family, and stressed me out while I had a day job trying to master the day job and, the master's degrees and keeping the GPA high enough. So,
what did he mean by delayed gratification? What, you're supposed to wait another 20, 30 years until 15 people in front of you died and perhaps you queued up?
That was my take. That was my take of it, that apparently at that point I had more than 20 years in my career. And my guess is he was thinking that I had another 20 years to go where I could be something one level up higher for about a year and a half before I retire or something. Yeah,
that's somebody who has his head somewhere stuck in a hard hierarchy. Hard hierarchies in those circumstances they typically ignore when you have other than maybe the occasional fast burner, but it's very hard to move up the hierarchy unless somebody dies in some circumstance. That's why fast-growing companies are typically much more exciting.
Yeah, he was a nice. I really liked the guy, but I'm pretty sure his management style is not the thing that helped my career. On the other hand, the whole "you're not good enough" or "you're not ready to do this" sort of thing that I took from the conversation is the reason why some of those, I think I'm up to 10 books, actually almost 20 books now. And some of that was because you think that I'm remedial or not competent enough to do this. I'm going to show you. I'm actually going to put the pictures in my signature at this company so we can go, oh, look, Jon, there's 7 of them. 7 product development books on various topics within product development that are specific to the stuff we do here. Now, the first 2 were not that, but after that, it became I'm going to show you. You're not going to hold me here back in this spot. I may be stuck here for a bit. You may not promote me. That's okay, but you're going to know some stuff.
I think I'd have left, but
I ended up leaving.
But at least it gave you the motivation to write the books.
Yeah, I was. I wouldn't call it pissed. Yeah, I think maybe I'd call it a little bit angry, but mostly I don't like people telling me that I can't or I will not.
Well, I think, I don't know. Well, if you have a growth mindset, I think that's one of the 10 ultimate insults. If you have one of those fixed mindsets, then it is, that's probably going to be confirming, and that that just plays to what you think of yourself, and those are, a lot of those are ingrained, and there are lots of reasons people fall into those. Jon, you have worked in large organizations and startups. Are they different in terms of, learning, getting ahead, those sorts of things?
I think so. I'm pretty sure that's true it's true from my experience, and it may be a universal truth, for all I know. What I can say about the large ones, a lot of times you get stuck into a spot, and they expect your performance to be within that. Not your performance. The things that you actually do, the scope of the work is often well defined, and they're expecting you to stay within that scope.
I have an example.
Cool.
Do you know who Henry Winkler is?
I do know Henry Winkler. I watched the Happy Days back in the day.
You have just confirmed how large organizations typecast and put people in a box. So for those of you who have never watched reruns, have never watched TV, have never streamed Happy Days, Henry Winkler was the Fonz, who I would suggest was one of the people. I mean, it was a great ensemble cast, but he, he did a lot of the heavy lifting on that series.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Albeit, let's face it, the guy who played, who was it? Oh, the kid.
Is it Opie? It's not Opie.
It was. It was Opie.
Yeah, it was Opie, but it's not who that character name was.
Right. But I mean, the kid, the other kid ended up and is now one of the best directors in all of Hollywood. Albeit, that's another thing that Winkler does. Again, front page of the AARP magazine is Henry Winkler suggesting that at roughly 80 some odd years old, he's finally dug himself out of the Fonzie box and is, acting on the stage, directing, doing all the things he ever wanted to be. He's the happiest man in Hollywood. All of that aside, the fact is absolutely that once you get placed in a box, if you don't get out of that box, unless I guess you want to be in that box forever, you're not going to end up being happy.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Back to startups.
Yeah. But the startups are even. It doesn't have to even be a startup. It can be just a small company too. Small companies are usually not, in my experience, if you're an engineer at a startup, you're not just a development engineer. You're probably going to be doing a lot of other things associated with product support, which is interesting. You probably have to come up with ways to manage the configuration because there may not be some formalized process. And if there's a formalized process, there's certainly not an office that manages those things and does auditing. So you're exposed to a lot of other things that help build your knowledge base. And it's probably going to hurt a little bit because you don't have these other resources to rely on. You're going to make a mistake. It's going to be a little bit painful and you're going to have to fix it. Or you're going to end up spending a lot of time and effort. I've worked in small companies and large companies. And very frankly, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, I expanded what I did in the small companies. I just did it, right? You see a problem, you attack it, or you don't, right? I mean, I know people who didn't. Heck, I did anything from being a consultant to a sales consultant that went on the sales calls so that I could actually help bid them. I mean, you do all those things because somebody has to do it. Yeah, you support the salespeople at sales events like Mid-America Truck Show. There'd be sales guys there trying to sell, but they don't really know the product. I'm the development or design engineer, so I would be the person out there talking about the details of the thing.
So you've been a booth boy too.
Oh, I can tell you, I did not. There's some fun in that, but it is difficult.
Well, difficult. You're on your feet the whole time. You're answering questions that you just come out of left field, or you're stone cold dead bored during those time frames when there's nobody in the vendor room, kind of thing.
Right. It waffles between those. You're usually answering a lot of questions, like you said. Then there's the dull part, but you're still on your feet. And the day starts well before the booth is open, and it goes on even after that. Hey, let's do some. The sales guys want to do something with some potential customers after hours, and
of course you have to be there. Well, yes. And what I always hated was tear down, but
yeah.
So, Jon, learning. I mean, we've stumbled back across this topic a number of times, learning and then finding your own way to grow yourself. That's on you.
That is on each individual, because I'm sure there are people who would prefer that once they get out of school with their engineering degree, for example, they would minorly update things, have as they present themselves and they're interested. But they don't really care to grow further than that. People are different. Some people have that growth mindset that we were talking about earlier, and some people this is a job, it pays really well, and I'm okay sitting in this little spot. But that comes with some downside, perhaps later at some future date.
I knew people, well, I guess I was one of those briefly. I knew people who wrote COBOL. I guess I still know people who write COBOL and are still doing it professionally. But at one point, there were a lot of people who did that. And as a matter of fact, almost you could shake a stick at a programming conference or a technical conference. Everybody did COBOL or Fortran, depending on really what they were doing. I did a little bit of both. I still thought macro assembler was better, but Yeah.
Fortran, that was the back in my day we had to do Fortran.
Well, we were doing robots and very frankly PDPs and things like that, and you wrote it in Fortran. Probably do it in C now or other languages, but that's what we used. You sure as heck didn't use a language like COBOL to do it. But regardless, those people who just said that's all I ever wanted to do, a lot of them are working at Walmart.
Yeah, I think there's more of that than we think, because for both my degrees at both of my advanced master's level, two different companies, I availed myself of their engineering support, their support for the classes, their monetary support, and I was surprised how few people were doing that. I'm thinking if you're paying, $15,000 every year or more for me to get a master's degree, I would not do that. I can't afford those kind of numbers for, $15,000, $30,000, $60,000 for 2 years or 3 years or even more. I was surprised when I found that there were very few of us doing those sorts of things.
Jon, if people want to continue the conversation, how would they find Jon M Quigley on the internet?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn at Jon M Quigley, and you can send me an email at jon.quigley@valuetransform.com, or you can follow Value Transformation on LinkedIn as well.
Until next time, Jon.
Until next time.
In Reread Saturday News, Chapter 10 of Leadership as Language, The Hidden Power of What You Say and What You Do is titled The Red-Blue Operating System. Marquet starts the chapter with the cautionary tale of the Ford Pinto. My wife, at the time my girlfriend, owned a Ford Pinto. This is one of the terrors of our young lives. The failure of leadership and the failure of decision-making model literally sentence people to death to achieve a goal. Links to this week's installment of Reread Saturday and previous installments are in the show notes at www.tomcagley.com or www.spamcast.net. Let's solve IT's dirtiest little secret. Work input, which includes prioritization and sequencing, is how work gets to an organization or team. If you get it wrong, all sorts of bad things happen. Jeremy Willits and I have written a book that will be published this January by J. Ross Publishing, Managing Work Intake. Link in the show notes to pre-order a copy. We built a workshop on the Maven platform. It's a cohort. A bunch of people get together and work through 5 weeks worth of exercises, peer discussions. Link in the show notes to this to get on the mailing list, to be in that first group that goes through this process. Let's solve this problem once and for all. By the way, this is one that doesn't get talked about a lot. Maybe it's not sexy enough, but very frankly, if you don't get it right, there is no Agile for you. Heck, there's no waterfall for you either. It is a problem. In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast, number 784, we will feature our interview with Mikkel Gardner and Brian Hackerson. We talked Agile Best Self and being in control of your Agile. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?